In the middle of the night, Iranian state television suddenly interrupted its normal programming. Viewers expecting routine political coverage instead saw something far more unusual. A group of senior officials appeared on screen, standing beside influential clerics. Their expressions were serious, almost tense. And then the announcement came, a new figure stepping into power at a moment when the entire region was already on edge. But it wasn't just the announcement itself that caught people's attention. Within minutes, clips of the broadcast began circulating online. Analysts started translating the statement word by word, and what they found raised even more questions than answers. Because the man mentioned during that broadcast was someone many people outside Iran had barely heard of. Yet according to various reports, he may have been quietly shaping major decisions for years. And when the message addressed to the United States surfaced in full, some observers began asking a much bigger question. Was this simply a leadership announcement, or was it a signal that something much larger was about to unfold? For years, the name Mojtaba Kameh rarely appeared in international headlines. Unlike many high-profile political figures, he kept an unusually low public profile. There were few official speeches, almost no televised appearances, and very limited public interviews. Yet inside political circles, reports suggest his influence may have been far greater than most people realized. Observers claim he built connections across several powerful institutions. These connections reportedly included religious leadership networks as well as individuals with influence inside security structures. Because of this, some analysts have described him as a figure who preferred operating behind the scenes rather than in front of cameras. Rumors about his role began circulating long before the recent announcement. Some reports suggested he was already involved in high-level discussions on strategy and political direction. Others claim he was often present during critical decision-making meetings, even when his name never appeared publicly. Still, outside observers could never fully confirm how much power he actually held, and that mystery only made his sudden appearance in the spotlight even more surprising. Because when his name was finally announced to the public, it happened at one of the most tense moments the region had experienced in years, and that timing raised an entirely new set of questions. The events leading up to the announcement were already dominating international news cycles. Reports had emerged describing a dramatic attack that allegedly eliminated a powerful figure connected to Iran's leadership structure. The incident immediately triggered global speculation about what might happen next. Governments across the world began watching closely. Inside Iran, emergency meetings were reportedly held among senior officials and influential clerics. While details of those discussions were never made fully public, analysts believe the leadership transition became one of the central topics almost immediately. Some observers claim contingency plans for succession had likely existed for years. Others argue the speed of the announcement suggested that key figures were already prepared for a rapid shift in power. But what stood out most was how quickly the conversation moved from shock to strategy. Within days, the mysterious broadcast appeared, and with it, the name Mojtaba Kameh entered global headlines almost overnight. But the story didn't end with the announcement itself. In fact, that was only the beginning, because soon after the broadcast aired, people began focusing on something else entirely. The message delivered during that first address. When the first translated versions of the speech began circulating online, reactions were immediate. At first, many media outlets summarized the statement with only a few short headlines. But as analysts began reviewing the full wording, different interpretations started to appear. Some commentators suggested the speech carried a tone of warning, directed toward outside powers. Others argued the language was largely symbolic, something commonly used in political speeches meant to rally domestic audiences. But one thing was clear. The address contained several phrases that observers described as unusually direct. Clips of the broadcast spread quickly across social media platforms. Political analysts, journalists, and policy experts began debating what the message might actually mean. Was it a genuine signal of a policy shift, or simply rhetoric designed to project strength during a moment of uncertainty? Even within expert circles, opinions were divided. And while public debate continued, intelligence communities in several countries reportedly began reviewing the speech much more carefully. Behind closed doors, analysts started breaking down the speech line by line. According to reports, several agencies examined not just the words themselves but also the context in which they were delivered. Timing, tone, and the surrounding political situation were all considered. Some experts highlighted specific phrases they believed hinted at a stronger geopolitical posture. Others urged caution, pointing out that speeches delivered during political transitions often contain dramatic language that does not necessarily translate into immediate action. Still, the uncertainty was enough to trigger deeper analysis. Policy advisors began asking questions about how the leadership change might influence regional strategy. Would diplomatic approaches remain the same? Would military posture shift? Or would the new figure simply continue existing policies established by previous leaders? No one had clear answers yet, and that uncertainty kept the situation firmly under the global spotlight. But while international observers were analyzing every word of the speech, another conversation was quietly unfolding inside Iran itself, a conversation about power. Whenever a major leadership transition occurs, internal dynamics often become just as important as external politics. In this case, several reports began circulating about possible rival factions within the broader leadership structure. Some analysts believe different groups may have had competing visions for the country's future direction. Certain voices were said to favor a more assertive geopolitical stance, while others were thought to prefer stability and gradual diplomacy. These claims remain largely speculative. Reliable confirmation has been limited, and many of the details discussed online come from anonymous sources or political commentators. Still, the speculation alone was enough to fuel intense debate across media outlets and online forums. If the rumors were even partially accurate, the rise of Mojtaba Kameh could represent a shift in which factions held the most influence. And that possibility raised an even bigger question. Was this leadership change simply about filling a position? Or did it represent a deeper transformation inside the country's power structure? As discussions about internal dynamics continued, global analysts began looking toward the future. What might this leadership transition actually mean for international relations? Some experts suggested the impact might be limited in the short term. Political systems with strong institutional structures often maintain consistent policies even when individual figures change. Others believe the personality and strategic views of a leader can gradually reshape a country's direction over time. Military analysts also explored several possible scenarios. If rhetoric from the first speech turned into policy signals, regional tensions could increase. But if the statements were primarily symbolic, the situation might stabilize once the transition period passed. Diplomatic observers emphasized that early decisions would likely provide the clearest clues. The first few months of leadership often reveal priorities, alliances, and long-term goals. Until then, speculation would continue dominating headlines. And that speculation was already spreading rapidly across the internet. Online discussions about the situation quickly became intense. Political forums, international news comment sections, and social media platforms filled with different interpretations of what the leadership change might mean. Some users predicted dramatic geopolitical shifts. Others argued the entire situation was being exaggerated by media coverage. Several commentators pointed out that similar leadership transitions in the past had generated massive speculation, but ultimately resulted in relatively gradual policy changes. Still, the mystery surrounding Mojtaba Kameh himself kept fueling curiosity, because unlike many global leaders who build public reputations over decades, he had emerged almost suddenly into international awareness. And when figures with limited public history step into powerful roles, speculation tends to grow rapidly. Everyone wants to know the same thing. Who is this person really? And what will he do next? Right now, the world is watching a leadership transition that unfolded faster than many expected. A relatively unknown figure has suddenly stepped into the center of global political conversations. His first public message sparked intense debate, and analysts across multiple countries are still trying to interpret what it might mean. Some believe the situation could reshape regional dynamics. Others believe it may simply represent continuity under a new name. But the truth is that the most important signals have yet to appear. Speeches can generate headlines, but real direction is usually revealed through decisions made quietly. Behind the scenes, policies, alliances, and strategic actions will ultimately determine how this moment is remembered. And until those decisions become clear, the rise of Iran's mysterious new figure will remain one of the most closely watched political developments in the world. Because sometimes the biggest story isn't the announcement itself. It's what happens after everyone stops watching.